Namaste, namaste, and good evening, everyone. I hope all of you can hear me properly. So today we are going to discuss ninth chapter. Ninth chapter we can call as the centerpiece of actually the whole of the scripture Bhagavad-Gita, situated right in the center. It is actually talking about now the infinitude of the self. So that is the ultimate knowledge that it can provide. It is therefore considered as the royal knowledge. Royal knowledge, Rajavidya, Rajavidya. I request everyone to mute. There's some feedback coming. Please check and mute yourself if you are unmuted. Okay, so let's get going on chapter 9. But before that, we will just quickly look at the main learnings from the 8th chapter. 8th chapter defined the fundamental terms that we all come across in our journey through the Upanishads and the Bhagavad-Gita in general. It talked about, it defined the Brahman as the imperishable infinite, and Adhyatma as the very nature of the self within all of us. And the actions that we perform in sacrifice as karma. We must also know that the self is housed within a BMI that is composed of perishable elements, Panchabhutas, that is called as Adhibhuta. And that power within this BMI is the one which enlivens every cell in the body, and therefore the mind and the intellect. And therefore, it helps us think and create the world that we have. So therefore, it is called as the Lord of all the world that we create, Adideva. And the attitude of sacrifice that results in karma is the element of sacrifice which is present within us as the spark of the infinite, called as the Adhyajna, the spirit of sacrifice. And the work that I engage in with this attitude of selflessness is the real manifestation of the self. This is basically what the 8th chapter defined for us. And then it concluded that because that we are truly reflecting the infinitude as a sacrifice, we actually reach that state of imperishability while living in this world through our actions that are sustainable and rooted in sacrifice. So you can say that the thoughts that are set on the self results in actions that derive for us the joys of the self. So all motivations are rooted in getting this Atma Tripti, and rather than the satisfaction of the pleasures of the body, mind, and intellect. We all know that our actions follow our thoughts. So we have to focus our body, mind, and the intellect on the self to realize the joys of the self. For this focus, total focus and practice, regular practice are needed to reach this splendorous state of the imperishable self. So thereby identifying with the self helps us to reach the infinite potential, which is basically the core theme of the next chapter. That is the 9th chapter today, which we are going to discuss. And to reach this imperishable state in the 8th chapter, it was defined that we need a self-controlled mind and intellect free from selfish passions, and be ready to lead an austere life, disciplined life. The process is to constantly think about the infinitude and the imperishability. Think, articulate that in your conversion from thoughts to actions, and finally express it in action. That is what our symbol of Om represents. The Ma state represents this transformation process of the infinitude within us as thoughts, and articulating it as selfless actions, and ultimately expressing it in the world. Be focused, regular, and persistent is the process by which we can achieve this. So to invoke this power, we need to put in self-effort. The effort of the self itself is required for that. The power of the self, as it is, it's pure energy, but then when it houses or energizes, when it is housed in the BMI, or when it is energizing my mind and intellect, our minds and intellects, it converts itself into a kind of power, a powerful force. And that force we need to tap to fight the vagaries of the mind and the intellect. So that force is called as the self-effort, which is our wealth with which we can fight in this world to achieve this imperishability, universality, imperishability, and infinitude. So we need some regular processes of focusing our thoughts on the self, attending to that, providing attention to what is required and what we must do, visualizing it and directing our energy through our thoughts. And that is how the self, as the yajna spirit within us, translates into selfless actions in the outside world. So it is the expression, it becomes the expression of the imperishable self. Today, we are going to see the characteristics of the self as the infinite. So this chapter, 9th chapter, is talking about this pervasiveness of the self in this whole universe. Everyone has got this power within, and that we call it the Atman, the self, and it is pervasive in the whole universe as well as even beyond. And what happens is we always project limited things onto this infinitude. Just like you can consider this as an infinite screen, the self as an infinite screen upon which we project a very limited world of ours, which we can, with our limited senses and the mind, with the limited senses and the mind, we perceive this world in a very limited manner. We do not even see the whole universe. We just see our world, limited by our senses and the mind. But when we actually using the mind itself and putting self-effort, focus on the powers of the self that we are in truth, the infinitude, then we have the power to expand into not only universality, but also become imperishable, as well as finally now it says to infinitude, manifesting the self, that infinitude, in transcending the limitations and attaining that statehood of infinitude. So that is the 9th chapter subject, is now to take us from universality to imperishability to finally to the infinitude. So the three fundamental nature of the self, attribute, you cannot call it as attribute, but that is what self is: universal, imperishable, and infinite. And that is what we need to realize. So this chapter talks about the pervasiveness of the self. Krishna declares to Arjuna the pervasiveness of the self, and states that the world itself is a projection on the self, or projection of the self on the self. He states that we are limited because of delusion, a state of mind in ignorance of the self. We need to transcend that ignorance and reach to the state of devotion, the state of mind which is set on the self as the infinite. Then he speaks about examples of manifestations of the infinite self, which is the most practical description of the self that you can find in the Upanishads. That is summarized here. We will take a look at that. And ultimately, we also should understand that the self is impartial. Whatever you do, as focused to self as, but with your intentions, if you are focused on body, mind, and intellect, you will receive the corresponding results. But if you are focused on the self, you are promised that you will definitely get to the state of infinitude. For that, you need to have a process, a practice, which we will discuss. So this is the content of the 9th chapter, Raja Vidya, Raja Guhya Yoga. So because you are seeking this, Krishna says that if you are able to seek this knowledge without any prejudices and doubts, or uh, raising trivial objections and frivolous, questions, etc. You are able to do that. I mean, in simple terms, if you say that, if you understand that the self is infinitude and that infinite power is within us, then you use the word but, and then say that, but, it is very easy to say that, but it becomes difficult in practice. That but, the feeling of but actually punctures the whole thing. So should not doubt that. That is what Krishna says. If you do not doubt this, if you are having a mind which is anasuyave, not raising trivial and frivolous objections or doubts, Bhagavan uvaja, idam tu te guhyatamam pravakshyami anasuyave. I will give you this truth. I will expound to you this knowledge of infinitude if your mind is not caviling or raising trivial questions. And Arjuna, I know that you are not. Therefore, I am going to give you this secret. This royal knowledge, which is also a secret. You know why it is called Raja Vidya, Raja Guhya Yoga? Raja Vidya. It's very easy for us to understand that it is the most royal knowledge, because infinitude, that is ultimate of all knowledge. Therefore, it is the most royal knowledge. Now, why is it called as Guhyatamam? That is secret. It is the royal secret also. Why? Because, secret is what? Secret is something that which we keep from others. We keep it away from others, right? That secret is something that is hidden from others. So here, the interesting thing is that this knowledge of the infinitude is very obviously described in the Upanishads, and in a very detailed manner through various anecdotes and examples and analogies. And we always say that, yes, if you ask what is self, self is infinite. We keep saying that. We even termed it as Brahman. Brahman, the infinite. But yet, at every moment in our life, we seem to forget this fact and act in a limited manner. So it is as good as it is hidden from you, even though intellectually you say that I am the infinite self. Still, the moment you start interacting in this world, thinking about life in general, and then start doing things, you feel limited. And you think that, I'm limited. So what happened to that knowledge, the self? It got hidden. So it is called as the royal secret, hidden knowledge. Even though it is all known to us, and we are striving to achieve that, understand that, and we comprehend it in some literal sense, but yet we fail to live that. So it is called as royal secret. That is why this chapter is called as Raja Vidya, Raja Guhya Yoga. So we are going to actually now in knowledge as well as in practice. That is why Krishna says, Jnana Vijnana Sahidam. I will, because you are anasuyave, because your mind is clear and your mind is filled with faith in this knowledge, and you are curiously and earnestly looking out to gather this knowledge and imbibe in your life, I will give you this secret. Pravakshyami Jnana Vijnana Sahidam. I will give you this knowledge plus the wisdom, combined with the wisdom. So knowledge is literal accumulation of facts that you have understood. Wisdom is the experience of that knowledge. The experience that you gain by that knowledge is called as the wisdom. So the inferential knowledge combined with the experiential knowledge I will give you. So this chapter is definition of infinitude as well as the experiencing practical knowledge of the infinitude. Both Krishna elaborates before Arjuna. So it is not mere inference that is required. It is also about experiencing it through practical action plans. Then and then only you will realize the infinitude. And that is basically what we are going to do. So we need to know the nuts and bolts level elements of practicality of this infinitude. That is what Krishna is going to give. Now, promises to give you in a few 30 to 34, I think, verses, which we will cover in about 1 hour. So let's get going on that. So that's basically what it is. So it also gives you the importance of mental attitudes to acquisition of knowledge. Krishna, in very brief letters, Anasuyave, the attitude of knowledge acquisition is practically elaborated there in one word. It implies that there is no ill will between the teacher and the student. So if we are set out on acquiring any knowledge for that matter, not only, let alone the infinitude, the knowledge of infinitude, any material knowledge, as a student, there should not be any ill will between the teacher and the student. Well, both ways. You should not have any ill feel towards the teacher, as well as the teacher should not have any ill feel. For that, you should therefore be careful. There should not also be any ill will regarding the efficacy and the validity of the knowledge. You should not even doubt the efficacy of the knowledge that you are acquiring, as well as the validity, whether it is true or not. So once you have selected the guru means any source of knowledge, and what you are going to get from that is going to be valid piece of knowledge in that domain. You should have that belief as well as the faith. And Shraddha should be there. If there is ill will, Shraddha suffers. Your focus of mind infused with the belief that and the understanding that this knowledge is efficient, as well as valid, and as well as it is given by a teacher who has got the required qualifications. So when you combine all these things, your mind becomes anasuyave. You reach that state where you will not be asking trivial doubts and questions, but you will be curious. Still, you can ask questions, curiosity, and then so that you want to clarify your doubts and then make sure that the knowledge is firm. The sacrifices are the true reflections of the nature of the self, is basically what we have been hearing from Karma Yoga, sacrifices. So my mentality of sacrifice, or the power enlivening my mind to start thinking in terms of selflessness, is sacrifice. And out comes that force, that is the self-expressing. So the electricity entering this filament in a bulb is now coming out as light. The electricity then is the light is the true reflection of electricity at that time. Similar, just like that, in an analogical manner, the self-expressing through the BMI, working out as selfless actions, is the true expression of infinitude or self. So to do this, we have gone through the practical strategies of Karma Yoga, of the right, the supreme motivations of the joys of the self, the right set of attitudes of Yajna, Tyaga, Samarpana, Prasada Bhavas, the mental integration of creativity, productivity, enrichment and skill sets, Brahmana, Kshatriya, Vaishya, Shudra, expressions of thought, and focusing everything on the duty, sense of duty, to do what is required to be done without any likes and dislikes, with total focus of mind, dhyana. That is Karma Yoga. If you do that, you will actually reach out to the universality. You will be able to reach out to the imperishability of the self. And you will also now be able to touch the infinitude. It is, in fact, it is said that this self that entered this BMI in Kadhopanishad, it is said that the self-existent, this self is Swayambhu. Self is Swayambhu. There is, it is self-existent. It did not originate from anywhere. The infinitude was there, is there, and will be there. Infinite, Brahman. So it is Swayambhu. It is self-existent. That self-existent one, the Brahman, projected the senses outward when it enlivened it. That when it enlivened my mind and the senses, what happened is it started projecting outward. It started projecting outward. Just like, the bulb projects the light outward into the outside, into the room or into the area, environment. Similarly, the self enlivened the BMI and started projecting outward. Therefore, every one of us look outward. So we are always looking outward. We are always looking outward. Not within, not within. And then it says, a certain wise one, somebody who is endowed with the wisdom of imperishability, universality, and infinitude, desiring immortality, imperishability, with inverted senses, inverting the senses, perceived the self from within. That is how somebody realized this infinitude. Therefore, that is the path. You have to go within yourself, reverse the senses and the mind, and dive deeper into your own self. So that is how Kathopanishad defines this, the way the infinitude entered us. So I thought we will start off with that. In fact, there is a beautiful definition of which I collected from somewhere. When the world is present, we know that infinitude is present. Because we cannot see the infinitude. We can only see infinitude through what it projects, the world. The world. When the world exists, we know that infinitude exists. And when the world is not existing, what is remaining is then infinitude alone exists. So that is what we should always have in our mind. When the world is present, infinitude exists. When the world is not present, then infinitude alone remains. Okay, so with that thought, we can enter into this. This is that Kathopanishad mantra, which I have projected here, which I will also be posting. You can refer to that later on. So basically what has happened is the infinitude, when it's enlivened, the self-existing infinitude, existence, when it gave existence to each one of us through the BMI, the senses started projecting outward. The intellect, mind, and the body, because combined with the ego, started producing out and projecting outward through selfish pursuits, physical pleasures, emotional whims, and intellectual satisfactions. That is what earthly action is all about. Now, it has given us this power of the mind to start looking inward. When you start looking inward, our mind becomes unselfish, rooted in the joys of the self, with supreme knowledge of the infinitude, right set of attitudes, the sincere austerities that we need to perform in terms of acquiring knowledge, charities, tapas, etc., and rise up to that sustainable level of the infinitude. So this is the process that the Bhagavad-Gita is teaching us. The Gita intelligence is asking us to look inward. How do you look inward in this life? Start understanding your infinitude, and that it is the sacrifice within us, and then projecting it into right attitudes, motivations, and austerities. And always be geared towards tapping the joys of the self. That is how we become infinitude. That is the first step. So, which is repeatedly being emphasized from chapter 1 onwards, and specifically in chapter 7 as universality, chapter 8 as imperishability, and now Krishna is going to give us this infinitude feeling. So he says in the beginning, ways even of the self is defined in one sloga. Maya tatamidam sarvam jagat avyaktamurtina. Matstani sarvabhutani na chaham teshu avasthitha. So it says, in English, we'll now define it as, I've written it here as I, small I as well as capital I, just to differentiate. It says, I am in I, but I, capital I am not in small I. Okay, this is I in capital I have defined here as two things. Let us look at it in a very simple manner. When Krishna says I, Maya, me, etc., he is talking about infinitude. When Krishna says me, he is talking about the infinitude. Understand that. And when all of us in the natural sense talk about I, what are we talking about? Each one of us. I. What do you call it? What do you, the normal, in the normal common parlance, when anybody says I, what is it? It means this limited I, confined within this BMI. We do not connect this I, the small I, to the capital I. We do not connect the small I with the capital I. Krishna says, this small I am in that big I, capital I. But I, the capital I, is not in just confined within the small. That is the first statement of definition. You understand that this whole world is pervaded by that self, the infinitude. In the unmanifest form, we do not see, I cannot see me outside of my body. It is unmanifest. But within me, I see me because I project myself, this physical frame, onto that screen of capital I, that infinite. It is like this, camera projecting the movie onto the screen. Similarly, to the infinitude, infinite screen, I project this BMI and think that BMI is me. But I forget the fact that I am also outside it. I am not confined within. That is the definition. The whole world is pervaded by the self in the unmanifest form. All beings, therefore, exist in the self. Everything in this universe that you see as moving and not immovable objects, everything is within me only. The whole universe is within me. But the self is not contained within me. It is, but I am in it. Myself, capital small I is within it, but the capital I is everywhere. And he goes on to say that people do not understand this because people suddenly forget about this total knowledge. Understand thus that, this as just like the voluminous wind moving everywhere is ever present in space, similarly all beings abide in the self. So as a diagram, you can actually look at this infinitude. I have just, even though it is a limited oval circle here, shape here, think as of this as the infinite everywhere. Just for illustrations, I have limited it. That's all, because we cannot, as I said, our senses cannot perceive the infinitude. So I have to show it as limited in the sense of, this. And within that is in every individual, the physical me, the physical Anandji, the physical Dr. Manjula, the physical Lakshmi, the physical Maladi, and the physical Sangeeta, and all those people everywhere. Everyone is within this infinitude. Everyone is within this infinitude. And a portion of that infinitude, I think, is me. A portion of that infinitude, I think, everyone thinks is me, even though I am the infinite. Because that portion of the infinite I, which is empowering and living my BMI, is making my thing, enabling my mind to project outward from that point onwards. And then think that this center point is me. That is what is happening. And that is how Krishna defines. So you have to start thinking in these terms. Or we'll look at another illustration for illustration purposes. Okay, forget about what is there on the left side. This is my screen. Now, infinitude. Okay. I've used this yellow color only to, so that it is clear. Now let us look at this. Let us, somebody is going to project now something. A sun is going to be projected on this screen. And I see the sun. Okay, in the sense, I'm describing the scenario. Sun is there now. I see sun as a limited thing there, the physical, within this physical frame. Similarly, a coconut tree is projected onto that infinitude, and the coconut tree is there. Similarly, see, Ram projects himself onto the screen and thinks that he is Ram. Krishna and Rahim. Everyone projects their physical frame onto the infinitude and thinks that I am that physical frame only. This is what is happening. Okay, now I'll remove the veil and let us look at this. This is what it is. Everywhere it is self. Only thing is we are placing ourselves like this. See? Because the self is unmanifested. Like, for example, here, the unmanifested area, I cannot see. Unmanifested, I cannot see. But when I am manifested, I see as that manifested entity. That's all. I hope you are thinking. When you think, you will start realizing this infinitude. This is me. It's infinite. And I am projecting. Every one of us is projecting. The sun is projecting and thinking that I am the sun. The coconut tree is saying, I am the coconut tree. Ram is saying, I am Ram. Krishna says, I am Krishna. Rahim says, I am Rahim. But who am I? I am the self. This is basically what we should understand. If we are able to comprehend this thing within your mind's eye, instead of the mind projecting outward, as Kathopanishad said, somebody turned it inside, reversed the senses and the mind, and suddenly you started seeing this infinitude. In fact, there is a very, even in our creations, human creations, we can see this happening. I'll describe a small experiment which you can try when you get time. All of you must be using a web camera, possibly if you have a webcam which is not tied to your laptop or something, a separate webcam. Take the webcam and and direct the webcam onto the screen itself, onto the computer screen, because what the webcam sees, we see on the screen. Okay. Now take the webcam and direct it towards the screen itself, back to the screen, and then experiment with it. Slightly rotate it or move in and move out or whatever onto the screen, and see the magic on the screen. You will see a completely different world. A world that you cannot even imagine. A graphic that you cannot even imagine. It's a simple experiment of how when vision is directed to itself, what happens. Okay, like the self. The mind is the tool that the self enlivens, and the mind is now turned onto itself, onto the self. And you will experience infinitude. Okay. Just to start believing that something wonderful will happen, try this experiment. Take the camera, webcam, and direct it towards the camera itself. The screen itself. And see what is happening on the screen. Experiment with it. You will see wonder. And it is like, one simple example I have, this thing I will tell you, the camera is nothing but, it is capturing the light and showing it on the screen, the light itself in different shades, that's it. So you take the light and then direct it onto the the screen itself, where the light is now shown, projected down. And then what is happening is there is an endless loop that takes place. And this light starts getting amplified. And it cannot, of course, obviously go on indefinitely because of the limitations of the screen and the electronics behind it. And therefore, at some point in time, you will see a flashing, blinding light or something like that. And then, it again starts, it starts, vibrating actually. It starts vibrating, pulsating. You can see a pulsating vision of light. Okay, that is the physical limit upon which the electronics has reached its limit, and then it's filtering off. So we don't worry about that. Now, when our mind is actually geared towards our own self, theoretically, you will reach infinitude. Practically, it will be limited in this life. But you can experience that sense of infinitude in that manner through meditation and all those things. Okay, that is one thing. Okay, so this is just to show you how when the mind, outward focusing senses are turned inward, the experience is going to be something totally different. Where you are going to see this, you are going to see the self. Try it out as a simple experiment, and then you can actually see what is happening. Okay, so another way of imagining it. Space. Everywhere there is space. This space example is what Krishna has used. So I am using that. And what do you see there? You guys, you see a glass. And there is space inside the glass also, and there is space outside the glass also. Is there a difference between those two spaces, glass space one and space? It's the same space. Suddenly, that glass material disappears. What happens? Where is glass space one? Will you actually be able to identify that? It is not. But here I can. Okay. Glass space one has merged with the space because it was always, there was no question of merging. It was always like that only. It was like that only. But it merged. We see when the physical limitations are blown away, when the physical limitations are blown away, the glass space one merges with the space. We can do that. We can do that with our mind. The Sadish space can actually merge with the infinite space. You don't have to kill me, physically disintegrate me to ashes. Even in this life, with the mind geared towards the self, the mind's eye will be able to experience that. That is only human capability. This is the capability of only humans. Sorry. The rest of the beings will have to die and then be merged to the physical Panchabhutas to merge. But we can, in this life itself, merge. For that, you have to have a mindset that is anasuyave. Don't doubt it. Believe in it. Because Krishna has defined it and told you this is it. Believe in it. Have that knowledge. Don't ever doubt it. But merge. But direct yourself to yourself instead of your projecting outward into the BMI objects and sensory objects. So, we all of us are like that. All of us, space one, space two, all different people in this infinitude. Only when the materiality is there, we see as different people. But the moment the materiality disappears, everything merges into one thing. Just one thing. And that is that space. So, what is happening is, that universal self which is the universal forces. Now the infinitude is now on the infinitude is projected the universe first. First is the universe was projected onto this infinitude. That is how the universe came. That's how the universe appears. And then, of course, there is the universal forces of nature and all those stuff. And then it enters my BMI as this force that gives me the capacity for metabolism, thought, and memory, etc. And then it becomes the energy of the self within me, and then it expresses itself as thoughts, power of digestion, power of inferring, power of remembering, all ATP energy systems, enabling me to do some work in this world. So the power of self expresses the work done. That transformation takes place. This is basically what is happening. It is like, look at it this way. The infinitude all around us, the I, capital I, energizing me as a small I. That is why Krishna said I is in E, capital I, but the capital I is not in I. Now you understand, no? Small I is in me, within physical frame. But the capital I is not within me. It is everywhere. That symbol notation. You have to. Now you can actually close your eyes and start thinking that. Every day, spend some time thinking about this. All of us are material, animate and inanimate objects in this world. Empowered by the dog, empowered by the Paramatman, the self. The human beings empowered by the Paramatman, the self, the Brahman. The tree empowered by the same power. And the stone empowered by the same. It is seamlessly, going through all of us. And we become individuals. We think that we are, because we direct ourselves with our senses to the outside world, we think that we are a separate entity. Okay. Just as an advanced statement of Advaita Vedanta, it says non-apprehension of the infinitude. I don't see, I cannot apprehend the infinitude. And therefore, I think I cannot apprehend through my body, mind, and intellect. Therefore, I think I am confined within this because I can see my body, mind, and intellect and how it works. Therefore, I think that I am this. So, non-apprehension of the self as the Satchidananda results in the wrong notion of the attributing of the capital I to the small I, to the Karana, Sukshma, and the Sthula Shariras, BM and I, subtle and the gross bodies. So that is misapprehension of the self, the infinite. Wrongly apprehending the self as the not self. Self and the not self. There are two things which we will see in detail when we go into chapter 13. So I am misapprehending the infinitude as that which is confined within my BMI. So within whatever is this BMI is the not self. It is not the self. So I am using the word not self. So self and the not self combined together, and that is we are. But the not self, BMI is not self, starts thinking that I am that. BMI starts thinking that I am that I. And therefore it identifies. My mind identifies with the limitations. Identifies, becomes one with it, with that. Misapprehension of the self as the not self is experienced as tadatmya. That is, this physical frame is now actually be equated to me with regard to this not self. So that is how all this happens. Limitations happen. That is how my mind gets bounded. My mind gets bounded to the physical, the material. The infinite, I forget. The selfhood, okay? For me, my feeling of I. Born of tadatmya, this identification with the limited, is called as ahangara or ego. That is how Vedanta defines. Advaita Vedanta defines ego as the selfhood born of tadatmya. This tadatmya. What is the tadatmya? That I equate myself with the limited. Okay. We'll not spend too much time on this philosophical rigor. Instead, we'll go forward. Okay, so the dog, the me, and the tree, and the stone becomes all different because of that. Just see this, the bottle. This is how we are. The self is empowering everything in this universe, everything in this world. If you can actually make this pulsating experience, completely wrap up your mind, then you will actually start pulsing with the universe. You will start pulsing with infinitude. Just like when you have the camera look on the screen, you will see this wondrous pulsation. Similarly, if you start looking inward with the mind and then start envisioning this, you can feel the pulse of infinitude everywhere. You can actually forget your BMI. You can completely forget your BMI. And what happens? Completely forget your BMI. You will merge with the infinitude. That which is not within the ken of your senses, mind and the intellect, completely occupies you. And you feel one with the infinite. You can feel the oneness with the infinitude. You can merge, you can dissolve your materiality. That is Paramatma, reaching to the state of Paramatma, the self, infinitude. You become infinite existence, you become infinite knowledge or infinite consciousness and infinite bliss. The existence, consciousness, bliss is the nature of the self. Infinite, everything in this universe, which is there, and which will be there, everything is contained within that. It is existence itself. It is existence itself. And it is consciousness itself. And it is bliss. Existence, consciousness, and bliss. So, Satchidananda, that bliss, when it is now enlivening a physical material being, material things, the material thing exhibits its characteristics. Now, this, let us look at the Ananda part of it, the bliss part of it, when it is in my mind, expressing through my BMI, the materiality principle of the BMI, that bliss actually gets limited. The infinitude bliss gets limited to 3 states: Priya, Moda, and Pramoda. Okay, this is Vedanta. Just listen to this. Don't worry about trying to remember or anything. And those who are interested can refer back later. So Priya, Moda, and Pramoda, the pleasures of happiness of the outer world. Because it is now projecting, as Kathopanishad said, it is projecting outward. And therefore connecting with the outward objects, sensory things, and experiencing, anticipating its availability, acquiring the happiness of acquiring that, and as the happiness of experiencing it. That is Priya, Moda, and Pramoda. 3, that happiness gets split into 3 fibers, and each one of them you experience separately, limited. This happiness, you can direct it towards the senses and the sensory objects. The Priya for outward objects, the Moda for the, of acquiring that, and the Pramoda of enjoying it. The problem is that it is transitory, in the sense that when you are enjoying, you are happy, and when it is finished, you feel disappointed. Or sometimes you get totally satiated, and that you reject it. So hope and despair becomes your mental state because of this outward projection of the Priyamoda and Pramoda onto the objects of the senses, hope and despair sense. Instead, if we are able to direct this happiness inward, not outward, Priya for the self, Moda for the self, and Pramoda for the self, then what results is fulfillment. So we have seen the joys of the self and what it is, and if you are striving towards joys of the self, how your quality of work itself changes. You become a star performer, you will start growing as a star performer. You will become professionalism personified. You will become a leader with ego completely ruled out. You become a star follower, or you will start expressing creative dissonance, creativity, productivity, and all those, to the betterment of this world. So that is basically what it is. And if that Ananda, if it is directed towards the self, that is the state of what is called as inspiration. That is the state of inspiration, or it is the state of devotion, bhakti. That is the state of bhakti. And this bhakti, the term is introduced in this chapter, and further details of the bhakti will be discussed in chapter 12. So this is inspiration. This is a pointer to the coming chapters. Okay, now again, let us all look outward and look, inward and also outward, and then try to understand. The whole world is a projection. We have understood how it is a projection. We see the whole universe through our physical. Whatever we see through the physical eye, we perceive. Beyond that, we are not able to perceive, but we know that it is there. The manifested world. Only the manifested world you can see. And what is happening is, in science is also now starting to understand how this is happening inside our brain. The brain is the device in which the whole universe is now stored. Like this. This is how we actually store. How sight information through the eye, smell information through the nose, sound information through the ears, etc. And how it is represented, we don't worry about it, but current research has shown that there is a way of representing this as a kind of four-dimensional or multi-dimensional, even beyond that, for multi-dimensional universe is represented. How it is represented using the infinite, the universe that is coming from infinite is now represented within this BMI of the limited senses and mind by the use of the physical hardware that we have. Is the cortical columns, the neocortex and the columns of neurons, organized as a millions of grid and point cells that make the outside world into an internal space of cognition. That is how it happens. Okay. At the moment, only worry about that. This is how it is represented. The details I'm not going into, because this is not, our interest is not that at this point in time, but it is a very interesting subject for those who are inclined towards it. You can research and find out, and there are many books available that is coming up now, which talks about how the world possibly is represented within this brain of ours. And then it projects onto the infinitude. So the sun, we see through the eye and we project onto the universe, and then we see the limited sun. Like that, everything in this universe is seen like that. You represent that inside the brain, and then you project your version of it. And that your version of the world is what you are saying. Okay, so our infinitude is limited by the BMI, limited by the senses and the mind. Cortical columns represent that and then project it to the outside world. The infinitude, which is unmanifested, which we cannot see, becomes manifested as the macroscopic universe. That macroscopic universe is now guided by certain laws of nature, forces of nature and laws of nature, creating the physical phenomena of the universe, and we see the outside universe. Similarly, in the same infinitude, which is filling up this universe, is filling up within, filling up and energizing my BMI. The microscopic view. From me, the mind now works and projects a world, which is the microscopic view. How does that the mind project? The power, thoughts. And then in the physical world as actions, we create our world. Thoughts becomes actions and we create our world. In the macroscopic view, the laws of nature becomes the physical phenomena in the world, creating the universe that we see, all projected from the infinity. This is how the microcosm and the macrocosm exist. Samashti and the Veshti. So you can draw a parallel here. The infinite, the universe, creating the universe, the unmanifested universe, unmanifested infinitude, the manifested universe, and the created world. Laws of nature is the thoughts of the infinite self. Physical phenomena is actions of the infinite self that creates the world. And the universe is the world created by the infinite self. Map it onto thoughts, actions, and the world in the individual. It's just one and the same, but limited by the physical BMI. That's all. That is analogically, mapping both these things together, the samashti with the veshti. Okay, now, if we have understood this, and we start reflecting on this continuously, regularly, and believing in that the infinitude is the real I, then we will be able to expand ourselves to infinitude. But what happens is, Krishna says from verse 11 to 15, he defines the delusion and devotion there. Delusion is living in false hopes, mogasha, moga karma, moga jnana, and vichetas. 4 words are used to define the state of delusion. Living in false hopes, engaging in wasteful activity, useless knowledge, and wrong thinking. That is, and what is useless knowledge? Knowledge that creates anxiety, that makes us, fearful, faithful, dependent, education that is not productive, creative, knowledge that is not available when required, thinking that increases confusion, and information that forbids free thinking. These are all useless knowledge. And wrong thinking, stress and strain, conflict and sorrows, boredom and fatigue, dullness of the mind, all those negative qualities of the mind, wrongful thinking. So this is delusion. And therefore, false hopes gives rise to false, wasted actions, useless knowledge, and wrong thinking. We become excessively indulgent in the senses, sense-oriented things. That is the characteristics of an asura. We become an asura. Or we can even become very bad, criminal, sinful, demonic. That is Rakshasa. So we will actually see asuric and rakshasic qualities in chapter 16. Devasura Sampat Vibhaga Yoga. More of those in that chapter. Now, the opposite of that is what is true knowledge. True knowledge is that which quietens your mind, brings in balance of mind as well as the intellect, equipoise and equanimity. It liberates us from fear, grief, and delusion, and gives fulfillment in life. This makes us peaceful and pure. And that is the state of devotion. So this is how the 4 verses define these states and the reasons behind delusion and devotion. And then, then Krishna enters a mode where he actually starts describing the practical aspects of the infinitude, so that you can connect with infinitude. Now, within this manifested world, you are not going to connect with the unmanifested, because your senses doesn't allow it. Your mind does not allow you to think about the unmanifested. So Krishna tells Arjuna, you don't have to worry about it. Look at the way it is manifested and connect with it. That is how he says. And he gives lots of examples from 16, 17, 18, and 19 verses. And that is what is listed here. I don't have to go through it. I will post it. But let us look at the practicality of it. Whatever is written here, the practicality of it, when it is described and then understood by our minds, we will be able to give out real characteristics of infinitude. In fact, I'm going to post here, show you a list of such things which our children, the children of 10 to 20 years of 15 years of age, children who understood this and started projecting what they understood. Let us look at a list of their postings. Says, simple things that reflect the power of the self. This is the eye opener. This is where actually every one of us will start connecting with the self right from now onwards. Okay, there are lots of value systems and phrases that we use for sustainable success. Let us look at some of them. Use determination to achieve your goals is one statement. In fact, replace determination with self. What do you get? You use self to achieve goals. That is what it is. So what is self? Self is the determination within you to achieve your rightful goals. Self is the determination within you to achieve rightful goals. Picture changes now. Next, choose the right path to achieve lasting success. So, right path, choosing the right path, the ability to choose the right path. That is a power from within. Ability to choose the right path. That ability to choose the right path is an energy within me, and that is the true reflection of self. Having a proper foundation for our path to success, proper foundation, dharmic foundation for our path to success. For everything that we achieve in this world, the successes that we achieve in this world, if we are able to put in the energy in the right dharmic way to achieve that success, that power is the self. Doing something with confidence is the secret of success. So the power of confidence within me is the power of self. Persevering will help us to get to success. So the power of perseverance, don't give up. The power of perseverance is the power of self. And we all say we have infinite potential. So that infinite potential, of course, we know is self. Then no regrets, no anxieties, but focused in the present. That power to focus or mindfulness, my capacity of mindfulness is the power of self. Hard work leads to success. The capacity to do hard work is self. Consistency and persistence lead to success. So the power of persistence is self. Honesty is the best policy. We all study from childhood. That honesty, the power of honesty is self. Process, not just the result, should be the goal. Okay, that power of my mind to stick to processes and not just be carried away by only the result is self. Ultimately, selfless action is lasting success. Self gives you lasting success. Selflessness is the power of self. So these are all practical elements of the self that is described in various ways in these three verses. Examples. And if you translate that into actual material plane in the practical life, you can translate this and you can actually find every day you can come up with these kinds of phrases and then equate with the self with the power. And those are all aspects of the power, the same power within me. It is all, everything is within me. So don't you think that we connect with the self every day, every minute or every minute, every second, every minute, every hour, every day, every week, every month, we can connect multitude of times with the self. Because you will find that the self is expressing through me. And if my mind is geared towards tapping that energy of the self, I touch the self. If I don't, then I touch my body, I touch my mind, I touch my intellect. That is what we all do most times. We touch mind, intellect, and body and forget to touch the self. That is the problem. Instead, Arjuna, Krishna says, see the self, infinite self within you as these things. And then you are constantly in touch with the self. That is how you realize the self. That is how your knowledge of the self becomes a vijnana. Jnana vijnana. It becomes your practice. Becomes your practice. The infinitude of the self becomes your practice if you are able to understand this and then apply this into your life. Okay, so I think I cannot make it more clearer than this, and I'm sure all of you would start living in this, connecting with the self, and be confidently saying, "Have you seen God today?" Yes, I have seen God today. Self, infinite self today. Have you seen God today? Yes, I have seen God today. Is there God? Yes, there is God, and I have connected with God today. We will be able to confidently say this. That is our experience of Bhagavad-Gita. That is the experience of Gita intelligence and in living. If you are able to connect with these sparks of the divine within us, which is already within us, you just have to take it out from within you. Constantly you can do that. You can see the self entering you and exiting, self entering you and exiting as self itself, self entering you and exiting as self itself. That is life of Gita intelligence. Self entering you and exiting as self. The moment self enters you and exits as anger, as ego, as all kinds of negative things, self is lost. The moment self comes out as determination, the power to choose the right path, the proper foundations in doing anything, the confidence, perseverance, hard work, focus, consistency, persistence, honesty, selflessness, you are translating self into action plans in this world. So that is infinitude. This is how you reach infinitude. That is how we touch infinitude. This infinitude, therefore, we can understand that it is within me. Self controls everything from within as the Adhyatma. That is my real Swabhava. My Swabhava is what? Is Adhyatma, the self within me. All these powers, perseverance, hard work, selflessness, consistency, determination, all those things. That is me, Adhyatma, the real nature, Swabhava. Now, and what is it? It is everywhere also. Self helps us from my immediate surroundings as Adibhuta, circumstances, the environment. So if you find the environment not suitable for you or agitating you, that means it is not the self. It is something bad that is created by other beings or you. The real surroundings is yourself, Adibhuta, as circumstances and the environment. So if the circumstances or the environment get polluted, that is not the self that is polluting. It is something outward, extraneous that is polluting the environment. You have to find ways and means of reducing that. Self helps us through our outer nature as Adi Devika. Phenomenal forces of heat, light, rain, and all those things. The oxygen that we breathe, everything. As Adi Devika. So Adhyatma, Adibhuta, and Adi Devika, the self, it is me. And you should always be praying. Our prayers should be geared towards that in terms of preventing sorrows from coming to you from your swabhava, from your environment, and from the phenomenal forces. So sorrows that is coming from Adidevika, outward phenomenal forces, light, rain, etc. Sorrows that come from Adibhuta, your nearby environment, circumstances close by, and Adhyatma from inner. So that is why in all our mantras, if you look at the Vedas and all, in all our mantras, we actually chant Om Shanti thrice. Om. Every mantra is culminated with Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. This three Shanti is chanted for Shanti, peace, from the phenomenal forces of heat, light, and rain everywhere, of our nearby, second one for circumstances and the environment, and the final one for the inner, Swabhava, Adhyatma. No, nothing from my within me, my mental and intellectual disturbances, or from nearby surroundings, or from the outside. That is the reason why this Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti is also to be chanted in a fashion just that the first Shanti is loud, then the second is more passive, and the final one is very silently, because you are first calling out Shanti for the whole universe, then to your nearby surroundings, and then from within you. So Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. That is the mode of chanting. Okay. So that's how the self is within us. If we employ the power of self instead to satisfy the dharma of only the body, mind, and intellect, what happens? The dharma of body is pleasures. Dharma of mind is whims and fancies of the thoughts, and intellect is arrogance and things like that. In the sense, satisfying. It's satisfaction, intellectual satisfaction, emotional satisfaction, sensory satisfactions. That is how, when the self actually enlivens these three things, they will start working for themselves. The three materialistic paths of promise, which promises us a lot: gross intellect, emotional mind, and physical body, and then gives you corresponding results. And those results will be giving you happiness for some time, but then it will start deteriorating. So they are selfish. So you have to get over this selfishness. That is what you should think about. And for that, what is required is, if we are able to work with total focus and devotion to the self, the powers of the self will carry our steady devotion to develop new capabilities as well as to maintain and enhance the existing ones. That is the central sloga of Bhagavad-Gita, 9:22. It can be called as the one Ekaslogi Bhagavad-Gita or something like that. And it is placed right at the center, just like a locket is placed in the center of a necklace. Vedavyasa has placed 9:22 at the center, right at the center, because that is a locket of Bhagavad-Gita. 9:22. Ananyas chindayando mam ye janaha paripasate tesham nithyapi yuktanam yoga kshemam vahami aham. If we work with total focus, ananyas chindayandam, without thinking about anything else, on the self, ananyas chindayando mam, on the self. Ye janaha padyupasate, whoever does this sort of worship of the self, tesham, avarude, whose minds are totally, mind and the intellect are totally focused on the self, nityabhiyuktanam, tesham nityabhiyuktanam, yoga kshemam vahami aham, I, the self, will definitely carry them through yoga and kshema. Yoga means developing new capabilities is what is called as yoga. And kshema means enhancing your existing capabilities and skill sets. So to acquire or develop new capabilities, yoga, or to enhance and make your existing capabilities more and more better, Kshema, what you should do? You should have total focus and dedication on the powers of the self and devotion to the self, only on the joys of the self. Don't be carried away by selfish means. If you do that, then that is the essence of Bhagavad-Gita. The BMI then becomes a tool in the hands of the self. BMI becomes a mere tool in the hands of the self. Self takes control and the BMI becomes the tool. So the self needs to be focused. It can actually focus on knowledge, wealth, and power for limited gains, or it can focus on knowledge, values, and wisdom and to gain unlimited success. Results could be slower in coming, whereas here it may be faster in coming. BMI is a Shipra Prasadi, but self is not a Shipra Prasadi. We have to understand that. Be patient. And in fact, various body's characteristics, age, size, health, etc. Body is a composite unity, is the perceiver that controls. If suppose you are fully focused on your body, the body is the perceiver that controls. You know what will happen. You can raise it to make the mind the perceiver and the controller. Or you can make the intellect as the controller, where perception, discrimination, judgment, etc. takes precedence. Or what Krishna says is that make the self as the controller. Self is the perceiver and the controller. If the self is the perceiver and the controller, in the sense, self is always the perceiver and the controller, but we do not understand, we forget that. That's the problem. Instead, if our mind is able to faithfully focus on the self as the perceiver and the controller, completely different world you have. That is when you rise to the levels of infinitude. Otherwise, you are a crawling creature, a mental wreck, or an intellectual pervert. The self, when it takes control, you become wise, Rishi. And Krishna says there is a in a very little single steps you can achieve this. That is why Krishna says in the next verse number 26, Patram pushpam phalam thoyam yome bhaktya prayachasi. An act of sacrifice, whether it is small, that is basically what, even if you actually start enjoying the joys of the self in very little doses, you will start amplifying it because you will start understanding. So that is what is analogously represented here. Even if it is a leaf, patram, just look at the evolution of a plant, a fruit-bearing plant. The leaf, first stage. The second stage, the flower comes. The third stage, the fruit comes. And the fourth stage is the juice, the essence of the fruit. So whether you give me a leaf, whether you give me a flower, or fruit, or toya, water, I am happy. You start small and you can rise to the higher levels. So even success strategies are rooted in such this phenomena, like motivations. You are selfish now, let us say. You want to remove that selfishness. Start small at the leaf stage. Grow to the flower stage, the fruit stage, and finally the scent stage. Beginner to expert. Attitudes. Start small. Leaf, flower, fruit, or water. Self will start. Self will bless you. Aptitudes, beginner, expert. Mind state of likes and dislikes, shunning likes and dislikes. Start small things. Give up small things, likes and dislikes, and then start elevating that to higher and higher and higher things. Leaf, flower, fruit, water. Start small, start local, and grow global. That is the beginner, the intermediate, the advanced, expert, or professional. That is how you actually grow. And that process is basically what is enunciated in this sloga to actually raise yourself to the level of the infinity. You must start in your family, in your society, in your community, in your state, in your nation, the world, environment, grow large. And the power of self is impartial. Whatever, even if you are doing it with outward sensory objectives, you will get that. Self will give you that. If you start striving and working hard to acquire wealth and aggrandize things, self will start giving you that and you will acquire. But then we'll end up in fleeting and limited successes. Whereas if you actually gear yourself to the self, then lasting successes. And that process of Ananyas Chintayanto Mam, Ye Janaha Paripasate, Tesham Nityabhiyuktanam, Yogakshamam Mahamyaham. That process takes you to the height of devotion. So how can you actually do that? All these changes within ourselves, if you are doing it in the right and not in the right manner now, how can you do that? We have only one tool, that is the brain. And nature, the universe has provided us with powers. And that is the power of myelination, synaptic connection, neurogenesis, neuroscience. Don't worry about that. But just to connect to that only, I've mentioned here, synaptic connections are made when you learn new things. Myelination for perfecting it, repeatedly doing things, it becomes myelinated. The connections become myelinated means that becomes your habit. Neurogenesis, new neurons are created when you retrain yourself, start doing new things. And epigenetics, of course, is the environment. The environment helps the brain to develop. So you have to, you have to have the right connections. Sangam is very important. The moment you land up in, bad companies, you will have problems. So Salsangapte and Sangatvam, all those things have come about because of that. And now we know that the brain has got this power, habit. And therefore, that is the reason why that those things were true. Now we know the science behind it. That's all. It is like it's like this. Raised awareness is required. For that, you have to raise your awareness to the, that is this process of actually understanding the nuts and bolts level of what Krishna told Arjuna is a process for you to create raised awareness about your own self and the powers that you are. And then you start focusing on things. And for that, nuts, bolts, take one nut and apply it. Determination. Okay, let us be determined towards goals. Persistence, consistency, all those are nuts and bolts. You raise your awareness about what is required and then you start focusing on each one of them. And how persistency and consistency, deliberate practice, and accountability. Set accountability to yourself. Consistently upgrading yourself. You don't have to be, nobody has to tell you to do this, but you start doing this. So the myelination process, the synaptic connections and the neurogenesis and all will start taking place inside your brain. But there is, of course, it is very fast and smooth when you are under the age of 20, 21. But beyond that also it is possible because the brain is like that. Till death, the brain is able to change itself. So that is the, faster during childhood, maybe harder and time consuming after 20 years of age. But still it is possible. And the brain is a device and it is blessed with the power of neuroplasticity. The power of neuroplasticity is the direct power of the infinitude into the universe as the forces of nature. That is what we should understand. And tap the power of neuroplasticity is basically what we should be doing. You can see that this myelination and synaptic connections, right? Learning synaptic connections and perfecting myelination is what is called as kshema. And neurogenesis, learning, retraining, learning new things, is yoga. Yoga and kshemam. So yoga kshemam vahami aham, Krishna says in 922, the essence of one sloka Bhagavad-Gita. Ananyas chintayanto mam ye janaha paryupasate tesham nityabhiyuktanam yoga kshemam vahami aham. The power of the self within me will take care of my myelination and synaptic connection. And it will also help in neurogenesis. That is what Krishna is saying. In the 21st century language, if you understand that, Ananyas chintayanto mam ye janaha paryupasate, with raised awareness, focused attention, and deliberate practice, ye janaha paryupasate tesham nityabhiyuktanam, who are completely, your mind and intellect joined together, taking self-ownership, accountability to yourself. Raised awareness, focused attention, deliberate practice, and accountability. Ananya chintayanto mam ye janaha paryupasate tesham nityabhiyuktanam. Avaride yoga-kshemam, neurogenesis, and kshemam, myelination and synaptic connections will be taken care of by the power of the self. That is all. We need to do, practice, believe, focus, and consistently do it. So that is what is the final sloga in the 9th chapter talking about. Manmana bhava madbhakto madhyaji mam namaskuru mamevaishyasi yuktaivam atmanam matparayana. Think about it. Raised awareness, focused attention, deliberate practice. Think about it. Put your heart into it. Anmana tat bhakta. Make it top priority. Tat parayana. Param. Tat vyaji. Put all your effort towards that consistently and persistently towards the goal. How? And with the mental attitude of focus and dedication in humility. That is important. Tan namaskuru. Focus, dedication in humility. If you do that, that is thought, love, priority, effort, and focus. If you do that, then you will achieve success. So this mental attitude is called as bhakti. Bhakti, therefore, involves thinking, loving, prioritizing, putting in effort with total focus in anything. If you put all these 5 ingredients into anything, that is bhakti. In achieving that or doing that. Bhakti is the process of thinking, loving, prioritizing, putting in effort, and with a total state of flow, focus. That is bhakti. This is how bhakti is defined in the 34th verse of the Bhagavad-Gita, 9th chapter. And this is basically what is now going to be described as a process in detail and the effect of it in the 12th chapter, which we will come to a couple of weeks later. So we know the practical elements of the self and how we can actually connect with the self every day, and what the brain processes are to be tapped. What brain processes are to be tapped. How? So just this as take this as an experiment for the next days, specifically in the next few days. You try to focus this. You are merely an instrument. Just think that you are merely an instrument in the hands of the self. How do you do that? Okay, how do you do that? 1, no insistence on the type of work that reaches you. Your duties. Don't insist that I cannot do this, I want this, I will only do this. No insistence like that. Whatever comes to you as opportunity or as duty, grab it. Don't put in any filters, likes, dislikes. And also no insistence on the results of the actions that accrue. And you do it. And don't insist that I should get this, I should die about this. No. Do it to the best of your abilities without worrying about the results. Try doing this in everything that you do. And then observe the quality of work that you churn out. And at the end of the day, do this throughout the day, and in the night, sit back and think. What happened to your state of the mind at the end of the day? Your limited mind will become infinite soon. Not on Monday, not in 2 days, not in 3 days. Keep doing this. After some time, you will start feeling infinitude. If some of you can try this all day and post your experiences, that will be great. Please do that. And you can post it in this some Gita every day, every day you can post. You can repeatedly post because you will make changes. Second day might be better. Third day might be much better. And if you experience something, please write it out so that it becomes a motivation for others also to try. Okay, please try. Okay, now just to before closing, I would like also remember the meditation exercise that we did here again. Something similar to that, I will just go through roughly, so you can actually in your own ways you can make it better and then do it. So here, what we really do need to do is to understand, direct yourself to the self. Uh, BMI devoted to self, prayers go up, infinite self seeps down, blessings come down if you do this. So let's try to how to actually do this. Ananya Chindayanda Mame Janaha Patibasate Tesham Nityabhiyuktanam Yogachelam. So Ananya Chindanam is basically what I'm calling it. This is a process of thinking about your infinitude and trying to connect that every day. We started looking at sounds and then trying to focus our mind onto one sound, and then that way increase the focus of mind. And this is another supplementary act. After 2 minutes of that, 3 minutes of this you can do, where you can start connecting with the infinitude. How, in a practical sense, what you should do is sit with your eyes closed. Let's try that. I'll just mention this process, and then you try to do it now, and later you can try it at home. Okay, so everyone sit straight and sit with the eyes closed. You can start breathing in and out slowly. Breathe in, count by parallelly, let's say 4 units, 4 seconds or whatever. And release that air in 6 seconds. So ratio is 4:6. So 4 ticks inward and then 6 ticks outward. Slower, that is it. So that is the process of breathing in and breathing out. Do that. Totally relax. As you sit straight, totally relax your body should be relaxed. Every point in your body should be relaxed. Then start from the toe, your toe. Focusing your attention on the toe. And then slowly the feet underneath and upper side, then to the ankle. This time you should be specifically relaxing these points of attention. And then the ankles, the calf muscles, the knee, and then upward the thighs, the hips, the tip of the spine. Relax your stomach, shoulders, the hands, the fingers, and then the neck, the facial muscles, the chin, the nose, eyes, eyebrows, forehead, and the focal point of, between the eyebrows. And then what you should do is go inward, the mind. Initially, just watch what emotions and thoughts are coming up and slowly control them, quell them. Sometimes, if negative things come, try to use the intellect, rationalize to see how you can prevent distracting and negative thoughts. So keep doing that. You may fail initially, but after some time, you will start conquering your negative emotions and thoughts and rationalizations. And when you have actually reached that stage, maybe after a week or 2 weeks, then you should start expanding your mind to include not just your thoughts and actions, but to the outside world, to your surroundings, society, community. Think about that. And slowly, you can do it in stages, expand further, and then slowly start thinking about the place where you are sitting as on the surface of the earth. Yes, you are sitting on the surface of the earth, but imagine the whole earth as a globe and you sitting perched on top of that with your feet on the ground. Imagine the whole thing, the whole world, the earth, and you sitting on top of it. And keep sitting there for at least 30 seconds or so, trying to fully comprehend that scene, the breathtaking scene of you sitting on the edge of the earth, looking out into the universe. And after that, slowly come back from the earth, from within your mind to within your body, and back to the toes touching the earth. Slowly, slow process, reverse process. Slowly come back. Take 3 minutes to do this every day, as much as you can. Slowly, 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 you will actually start connecting with this infinitude feelings. Finally, breathe in and out for 4 units, 6 units ratio. And then, just rub your eyes and then come out of it. Okay. So this is a process that helps you to focus your mind onto the infinitude that you are, apart from the knowledge of that was administered through the chapter 9 by Krishna about the nuts and bolts level infinitude that we can connect with every day. Try that. Try this. This also is there is also some medical benefits which neuroscience says of stress inoculation. This process can also inoculate you from stress because of noradrenaline, a hormone and a neurotransmitter that is involved in the increase of focus and attention and improving your mood. Also has anti-inflammatory properties, which has been shown to help people who suffer from chronic stress, anxiety, and depression. Okay, so that is the benefits that you can get. Maybe after 1 month of practice, you will start feeling these health benefits also, in addition to your spiritual benefits of identifying and connecting with the infinitude that you really are. So the 9th chapter, I can summarize the whole of 9th chapter in 4 verses. Verse number 4, 8, 22, and 34. What does it say? In 4 lines, phrases, you can do that. Self is infinite. 9th chapter says self is infinite. And this infinite self enlivens our body and exhibits our mind's characteristics. Faith in the self will help develop and maintain capabilities of the mind. Yoga Kshemam Mahamiyaham. How? Through focus, devotion, selflessness, and humility to attain that self. So this is the 9th chapter in summary. Self is infinite, which is enlivening our body. Self exhibits our mind's characteristics thus. And if with faith in that self, if we can focus on our activities, it will help develop and maintain capabilities of the mind. And that practice requires focus, devotion, selflessness, and humility. That will help you attain the self. So that's the summary which I will be posting. With that, we will end this chapter entitled Rajavidya Rajaguhya Yogam, the 9th chapter, or identifying the infinitude.